Hello, we are here at PR Live Europe. I'm here with Julia and Sofia. How are you both feeling? You've just come off a session.
Good. Yeah, it was good. It was an interesting session.
Yeah, really good. It was fantastic turnout. Loads of great engagement from the audience. It was really good.
You were talking about all things tracking, and I'm excited to learn a little bit about tracking from you both this year, because it's been a big year in terms of tracking developments. Everything from AWIN CPI to what happened with the cashback exemption with the ICO. I was wondering if you have noticed any real tangible changes in terms of tracking this year as a result of these things.
So if we take AWIN CPI first, I think what AWIN have tried to do with CPI is amazing, right? It's about getting people off legacy tracking setups and getting them onto what they would see as gold standard tracking. And I think that is important, essential. I think that there's been challenges in how that's happened. I know they've had quite a lot of pushback from some of the brands they work with, but I'm also aware that they have actually got some brands to upgrade their tracking as a result, which was the whole point. Some of that takes a really, really long time, so I think we'll keep seeing some of the results of that come through. But overall, I think that's been positive. Maybe didn't have the seismic impact immediately that some publishers thought it might do. But actually the loyalty exemption is a really interesting one. And I guess working with reward publishers, we can see those sort of conversations with advertisers and the impact that that has. So for example, where loyalty exemption has been implemented on some brands, I've seen data that suggests that's as much as a 20% uplift in terms of the level of conversion that they see increase. Not quite the 40% level that some people hoped it might be based on that government data that got released originally, but still pretty big. I think there's a really big thing for brands to think about with this though, that is if your loyalty publishers are tracking that much more and non-loyalty publishers are not, how do you look at those two data sets on a level playing field? So for example, if you're working with content, CSS, someone else that's working in a non-loyalty arena, you need to bear in mind that there might be another 20% of sales that you can't see when you compare them like for like with your loyalty publishers. And I think networks could do more to push that message and actually support that in their reporting as well.
Terrific. And a lot of tracking we talk about in terms of tech, but there's also a lot of kind of internal compliance and legal issues that can cause roadblocks. To what extent do you think that impacts tracking, and what kind of solutions would you recommend for that?
Yeah, I think...
I'll just pass you the mic for that one.
Oh, thanks, Sol. Yeah, I think it's very different nowadays. I think nowadays there are so many different teams involved in trying to ensure that what we do is compliant, it's ethical, and also, then your normal teams like your dev teams, your tech teams that are then supporting to actually get those tracking optimizations across the line. We spoke about it today. It's no longer just an affiliate manager and a tech team. There are loads of different people now that you need to speak to internally to make sure that they're happy with tracking upgrades and optimizations. It's become legal, it's become data, it's become your normal affiliate teams and your dev teams and all of that. It's a very collective effort, but also that does mean that sometimes it's a longer thing that we're looking at here. It's not just, we want to upgrade from Pixel to server, how do we do it? We need to find the right time, we need to find the right teams, we need to make sure everything's compliant. So I do think, we just need to understand that there's a lot more going on in the background from a client's perspective. Even things like getting new contracts signed up, if you might need like an addendum to a contract or something. There's loads of different steps in the background that are being worked on, as well as the actual tracking optimization itself.
Absolutely. And on stage you were talking about kind of free, more like boots on the ground, realistic things that you could maybe do over the holiday period to really help. Could you share what those tips were?
Absolutely. So I guess from my perspective, one of the things that I would really recommend is things are going to go wrong over peak season. It's your busiest time of year. There's tons going on. Something at some point is going to break, and the faster you can tell your publishers about that and get them to help you be part of the solution, rather than trying to hold off and trying to get them to keep their campaigns the same as they are, that will really improve your relationships with them and cause you a lot less problems further down the line. So communication, from my perspective, is the biggest thing that you can do.
No, I agree with that. And I think also involving your partners when you are trying to make tracking optimizations. If you're, say, about to go through a huge migration, realistically your top 10 partners should be involved in that. They should know what time the tracking's switching. You should be working with them to ensure that there is no loss of revenue during that period. But I also think as well, using this time to do a bit of a SWOT analysis of your program, looking at the strengths, understanding what your current tracking setup looks like, understand what your network advocates as their version of gold standard now. Has anything changed recently? Have they worked on any new solutions? Ask your network as well, what's on their product roadmap? I always ask the network in a QBR what's on their product roadmap. I really like to know that they are thinking about what's coming up in terms of tracking obstacles and that they're working on solutions in order to ensure that they're future-proofing your accounts. So I think involve as many people as you can, involve the networks, involve your partners, and just keep open lines of communication, as you said.
I also remembered one of the tips from our other panelists, Imogen Collins from Genie Goals, who was our resident attribution and tracking expert on the panel. She mentioned a really handy tool called STAPE, STAPE, which will give you an analysis of what sort of a tracking setup you've got and give you hints on what's good, that kind of thing. I could see all the brands in the audience going, ooh, writing that down, so I thought that was an interesting one to pass on.
I'd also like to ask about GA4. It's been causing a lot of problems for affiliates. I'm wondering if you have any tips on how to navigate that.
I think it's always going to be difficult when your data sets are no longer like for like, and that's what happened with GA4. We moved from 360 to GA4, and then all of a sudden how the tracking's done is changing, and your view of what was normal performance has changed. That's always going to cause a different layer of complexities, but my recommendation is don't focus just on one report. Firstly, utilize the other reports that are available in GA4. Things like the DDA report can sometimes show you a slightly more inline view to what your network data shows you, but also utilize your network data as much as possible as well, and look at them all side by side to try and build a complete picture. I think just not relying on one data source, because it's hard. You're only seeing one scope of the picture, and you might be looking at a technology that potentially favors one type of tracking over another, or attributes in a slightly different way. So I would say just looking at multiple different reports to try and build a concrete view is important.
And while we're on the topic of attribution, I wanted to ask you both about last click. It's really been brought into question this year. How efficient is it as a tracking method? When I've talked to networks in the past, they've said that there are other solutions in place, but advertisers aren't always receptive to using other methods. The last click is the favorite of advertisers. And I really just wanted to get an opinion from you about last click and the direction it's heading. Is the industry outgrowing last click? What's your take on all of that?
So I think that this is one of the biggest sort of internal contradictions that we have in our industry, because we're basically saying everything gets paid on a last click. But then we're also saying how much value are publishers driving throughout the funnel, who's the best sort of top of the funnel purchase affiliates, how are publishers driving incremental sales, and then paying on a last click. So the expectations that we have are not aligned with the financial rewards. And as you say, some networks do sort of offer other solutions to be able to support that, which aren't widely used. Actually, I think the biggest missing piece of the puzzle is the information that's given to publishers, because at the moment, nearly all of the attribution solutions that are provided by networks are for advertisers. So advertisers get to see where the publishers sit in the purchase funnel, how they feed into their other channels. The publishers have got no visibility on that. And we know the data is there because I've managed to persuade some networks to build reports custom for us and give them to us in a spreadsheet. That could all be sitting there in the interface. And if publishers could see this stuff, they could optimize to it, and then it would make much more sense to pay and reward them to it. So I think the biggest thing I would push here is networks need to give publishers more access to this data. And there are some publishers that do this really well and talk to brands about what they're doing top of the funnel and work with them on things like that. I don't know if you've seen bits of that, Sofia.
Yeah, I do think as well that we are doing a lot more in the industry to start rewarding partners that might lose out on a last click basis. You know, we've seen a lot of brands actually really embrace things like CPC campaigns. A lot of brands will quite willingly pay larger flat fees if they want to work with big content partners, because we know that typically that content, then like, you're not really going to see the conversions off the back of that. It's a very much upper funnel tool. So, you know, we are incentivizing, rewarding in that way. And I think, you know, we've seen some really great partners come out of the space recently, such as like Linkme. So you can do really sophisticated CPC campaigns, and actually they do a lot of the heavy lifting within their technology for you. So I think last click at the moment still is the norm, and it's very hard obviously to change the norm. But I do think there are other ways that you can fairly reward and incentivize partners that might be missing out from a last click model.
So last click, in your opinion, not going away, but changing potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot more that we could do than just last click.
Right. Julia, Sofia, thank you so much. Pleasure.